मृतं गमय आविराविर्मयेधि ॐ शान्तिः 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 हरिः ॐ. May we be protected, may we be nourished, may we strive with energy and vigor, may our endeavors lead us to the truth. Lead us to truth and not to untruth. Lead us to enlightenment and not ignorance. Lead us to immortality and not death. Let the self-manifest Atman grow in me. Om peace, peace, peace. Good morning to you all. We have gathered here to celebrate life. Life is short, as Swami Vivekananda said. The verities are many. Those who live for others, indeed, they live. Rest are more dead than alive. So, Peter, and Bert, both of our friends, have departed from this world. And we have grief within, but this is the natural course of life that we must remember. This is a passing phase. Life is short. And we are here. One day we all have to move away from here. There is something which is not moving. Ek vinashe, ek asthira man. So Rachana Ram Banai. It is said, Guru Nanak, great Guru of Sikhism. Actually, it is part of Hinduism, Hindu Dharma. So he was a Vedantist. He said something is not moving and something is changing all the time. And this is created by Lord. And it is wonder that we see. So this hall was vacant. Now we have all moved in. And after a certain time, we'll move out. So there is something which is not moving, which is stable, which is the substratum of everything. And something moves. But whatever changes, that gives us an impression that remains with us. And that is more important. These are manifestations of divinity in various forms. And two of our friends left us. They left some memories. We'll enjoy those memories from various friends. So with this note, I welcome you all. But all the time we have to remember that something is not moving within us. It's not that outside of us. And something we see changing all the time. We have to be aware of that. That never dies, that never born. So this we have to keep in our mind and let us enjoy the life. Enjoy means not the objective world, but to find out that unity, that divinity which is already within us. So welcome you all and let us hear from our friends. Short says little. I know about Peter. He's jovial, he's one-pointed, and he was like a simple heart. That is more important. As Sri Ramakrishna also praised those who are simple in heart. He was talking to M, the recorder of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, about Niranjananandji later. Swami Niranjananji. He said, he's very guileless, isn't it? Yes. So simplicity, like various manifestations are there. And Bert Cornick, I also saw him. Both were dedicated to God. That is important for us. So let us be dedicated to God, and we'll hear from our friends. Thank you.
The first leg of the program will be to try to remember Peter, and the second leg will be about Bert. So, Susie, when you are ready, showing it on your sharing already. Okay. So, I'll begin. So first, I'll talk about Peter's life for maybe about 10 minutes. So Peter's life begins in New York City. His name is Peter Valentin Tenu. So Peter's father is Valentin. Valentin arrives via Manhattan from France to New York. Now, interestingly, he was a photographer for Cartier jewelry company. So the Cartier sponsored his journey to United States at that time, and he starts living in Manhattan, and he meets Lynn Bohe, who is another new immigrant from England, and they marry. And Peter was born on May 7th, 1929 in New Rochelle, New York. Now, Peter was the youngest of two children. He started going to a boarding school very early in life in Bronx. And unfortunately, at the age of 7, his father, biological father, Valentin, passed away. He actually was very small when this happened, and he was in the school. Somebody just informed him that his father has just passed away. And he probably, according to reminiscences, did not even go to his father's memorial service. We are not sure, but this is what I've heard. And then what happened is that Valentin made very good money because he worked for Cartier. But unfortunately, after that, Lynn had to start working. So he started missing his mother. This begins a very interesting part in his life, that he did not get a lot of time from his mother. When he eventually met Swami Asheshananda in 80s, he actually later on commented to me when I interviewed him in Randall in Legacy Hospital. He said, I found mother in 1980s. So next slide. So what happened is post Valentin's death, Peter's mother, Lynn, started working for a person called Fred Bartson. We will hear more about their business in interesting interview later. But what happened is Fred Bartson originally was Fred Buxbaum, very Jewish person from Czechoslovakia. He had to move because Hitler attacked Czechoslovakia in the Second World War. The Buxbaums pretty much packed whatever they had in their trunks and showed up in New York. They started a business, and for which Lynn was the secretary. Lynn later on remarried Freddie, and Peter got his stepfather. His relationship with his stepfather was great, and Freddie actually was Jewish. So that's how Peter, although grew up more Catholic, knew about Jewish traditions. And then Freddie got him pretty much serious about his life, and he eventually started college studying pre-engineering in Samson College in New York in 1947. Now, after this, he was trying to help with his father's business. And after the Second World War, the government came up with the GI Bill. So he signed a deal with the US Army that would let him first go to college for 2 years, finish his bachelor's, and then he would join the army. So he joins Cornell and gets his bachelor's in hotel administration in 1952. Immediately after that, he went to Korea for serving the US Army in Korea. But the war had already ended when he went to Korea. So they were still there. and he actually was in the DMZ in 1952. DMZ is still one of the hottest crazy places and fortified places on this planet Earth. He was there when it all started. And there he originally was in the artillery division, but then he figured out a way to get out of weaponry situations or ammunitions, and he started serving in General Maxwell Taylor's mess. He was literally making food for the general. Some of you know about Maxwell Taylor. He was World War I, World War II veteran, eventually was a big general in Korean War. He eventually was in Vietnam as our ambassador from United States and was one of the main persons who may have started the Vietnam War. So he was a very interesting figure in American history. After he came out of Korea, he was in Fort Bragg in North Carolina, and then he went to Alabama. His time in Alabama, he described to me as, I was just a Yankee in the South. Next slide. So after this, during this time, Freddie has already decided to move out of New York, and he moved to California. He sold whatever business he was doing in Garment District, you will know soon. He then bought an avocado farm in San Jose area, and also started a real estate business of buying houses and flipping them. Peter joined him and Lynn there and started working on the real estate business. He really learned how to So he really learned how to basically work around houses, since he was like working on them or like flipping them. So he started actually working to rehabilitate them at that time in California. Now, during this time, he started going to the San Jose State University. And this is the time when he got inspired to hang around in the art department. And he got his deep interest in art by that time. And he started working in the art department. He eventually got a master's in in art, in sculpture, actually, in 1960s. Now, during this art works, he had an art model, and he really liked that art model and eventually married her. Judith Gale, Peter's first wife. Peter married Judith in 1963, and their daughter Letitia was born in 1964. Next slide. Here it's. So what happens is that in 1965, Judith and Peter decide to move to Snohomish, Washington. There, Peter finds job in Everett Community College, and Peter starts teaching art. And also Peter starts making art outside. And there he meets Professor Randall Jelinek, or Randy. Randy was the chair of Linfield College Art Department from 1965 till 1980. He was a lifelong friend of Peter, and eventually Randy and called Peter to come to Linfield College. So sometime around 66, 67, he starts living in McMinnville, Oregon, and starts teaching in Linfield College and starts taking artwork jobs all over this area from Portland to McMinnville. There in McMinnville, something very interesting happens. They initially were in a rental, and then they purchased a house which was in a very bad shape. Peter learned how to do plumbing, how to do all things related to the house from books from the library. And he remodeled and remade the entire house in McMinnville. But there something interesting happened. Next slide. So during this time is when his environmentalist nerve started tweaking himself. Peter, we know, was very big into environmentalism. It started because of his stepfather. Fred was very much into environmental causes, and he used to heavily donate and contribute to many environmental organizations, including the Nature Conservancy towards the end. So he got very inspired by Fred. And during this time in Linfield College, he starts working with them. And there was a lot of enthusiasm about environment at that time. Richard Nixon is not usually remembered for doing environmental work. He is remembered for Watergate. But he actually established the Environmental Protection Agency. He passed all those laws that still actually starts protecting the environment in 70s. And that inspired people to start thinking deeply about the environment. And what happened is in April 22, 1970, the first Earth Day was celebrated in Oregon. And Linfield took a first position. I thank Corvallis Gazette for sharing with me the original newspaper from April 23, 1970, which is here, you can see. And I have highlighted the point where the reporter reports about the event that happened in Linfield College, which was only collegiate event. People thought that they are all going to die by 1980s at that time. They are not going to make it. It will be so polluted and like everything is going to kill us. But well, we are still here. Yeah, next slide. So his Linfield is also the time when his mind started going towards Eastern philosophies or Oriental philosophies. So a Swami from Radha Swami Satsang Bias, this is a group in India, visited Linfield College for a talk. Peter and Judith were at that talk, and he got very inspired by that Swami. The Swami even visited his house and gave a satsang or like talk to the group. Something changed in him. According to his daughter, it kind of strung a chord in Peter, which remained in that position for the rest of his life. He got so inspired that Judith and he decided to actually go and travel with the Swami. Judith couldn't because of because she was very small. So Judith stayed back. Peter left, and Peter went first to Colorado, and then he went to Tucson, Arizona, where still today we have an ashram by the Radha Swami Satsang people. So that was a beginning of his journey. But unfortunately, he was very unsatisfied with the Swami that was there and his conduct, his personal life and his personal conduct. So he got disgusted and came back. He came back in 1975 or 76 to Oregon. But by that time, since he had already been gone away, his relationship with Judith declined. And in 1976, he started staying in the Portland area, and he started taking commissioning work from the Portland Art Museum. And this is the time, from that time, he has been staying in the Portland area, literally in the beginning of 1980s. Letitia starts visiting him very often from McMinnville to Portland, and that's when he starts doing all these artworks in various places. One of the most famous of his artwork, which the Smithsonian recorded, I had a email conversation with them, was when Smithsonian in 1990s did a project on outside artwork. The Family. It is an artwork present in Oregon State University campus in Corvallis. You can still see it. It was made, and Smithsonian actually featured that in their articles. So in 1984, in an art in schools meeting in this area, he meets Nancy. And during this time, in 1980s, sometime around, he met Swami Asheshananda. We do not know the exact time. For many other people, we know the exact date and time. But somewhere between 1983 and 86, he meets Swami Asheshananda. Peter was a Karma Yogi and an environmentalist. So we know that Swami Asheshananda would usually direct people according to their demeanor. So of course, he was directed to Karma Yoga and to the environmental work that he wanted to do. So what I'm showing here is the Vivekananda Shrine in Scappoose. The Vivekananda Shrine is a wood-built structure with a Shiva Shakti architecture. So this is something very common in India. The first part is more smaller and flat, and then in the back you will see a very tall, and there is also even a ratio between those two things. Now, this shrine is full made of wood, and due to the rains and weather, it tilts. So every couple of years, you will see people going with giant ropes and everything to try to make it again straightened up. Peter had done it probably 1,000 times. Yeah. And then there actually in the picture, I can show. So here you see plexiglass and you see those wood. So he actually did all of those work with his own hands. It is still there. Many of you will probably visit there today. Please go and see his work. He did many other things. He knew about every tree, probably every other twig, but a few things you can literally see and touch is some of these. This is a picture of him with. So when I went to interview him in when he was having oxygen issues and stuff, I asked him that, who did you do this work with? He probably said it like 15 times. That is the time when I did all this work with Terence. So I thought, there is no way that I cannot put a picture of him and Terence together. So, and then he said, yeah, towards the end, Thomas joined us also in the work. So Thomas Lifshutz, he is also here today. That's the reason I thought of putting this picture here. So if you look back, our center is known by this beautiful tinted colored glass, right? And you can see here Swami Devishananda at that time, Brahmachari Bhuma Chaitanya in this picture on the left doing puja, and you can see the puja and you can see that the colors. Now this one was completely dilapidated in 1990s. In 1995, he rebuilt this entire area, and that is still existing. This is handwork of Peter right now in this room behind him. Then our center is also known by the pillars outside the shrine. These pillars also had a very tough luck in 1990s. He rebuilt each of these pillars using welcome and all the materials, and you already know that he has past skills of doing work of this kind. He rebuilt all of them in 1995. I went to interview Terence actually for this part, and he told me every material that Peter used to build it actually. This is a picture of him with his guru in the bottom part. You can see Swami Asheshananda towards the end when Peter was trying to talk to him. You can see Swami Shantarupananda on the rightmost. In the middle, many of you might have met this Swami, many of you might not have. This is Swami Pramathananda. He originally was in Sacramento, eventually the minister in charge of our Toronto Center. He used to visit here very often, and this is the picture of all of them. Now, more pictures. So on the left, this is a retreat of Swami Sarvapriyananda, who will be here next month when all of these people went to Vancouver. In the middle is his picture working in Scappoose probably 3 years before. When he was 92 years old or 91. One of the happiest days of his life, he gave his tractor to our Vedanta Society in Scappoose. And you can see with Thomas, his picture, how happy he is. Finally, he is standing in front of the Temple of Mother in Scappoose. Next slide. Greenhouse. If you go to our garden, you might have seen this. This is the dedication day of Greenhouse, August 2019. I had just arrived. Thanks to Susie for sharing these pictures with us. You can see Swami C and Peter standing. Ranga gets a huge pose in the middle because he was sharing tea. But you can see Peter behind. In the right side is Garuda Award. Garuda is a bird, and he is a devotee of Vishnu. He practically carries Vishnu on his shoulders and his heart. So Vedanta Society's award for lifetime service as a Karma Yogi is Garuda Award. Peter was conveyed this by Swami Chandrasekharananda in the middle of the pandemic. Finally, thanks to Portland Art Museum for sharing one of his artwork days picture in good resolution with me. This is going to archive for sure. And when I interviewed him, he was in this hospital and he was watching cartoon with a giant mother picture on the table where you provide food. He was looking at mother's picture the entire time and hearing to the cartoon. When we entered, he stopped the cartoon and started moving the mother's picture towards us because he wanted to share Holy Mother with all the people in the room. Then the nurses came, he moved it a little bit so that it can be shared with the nurses and all of us. Then he started explaining to the nuts. I would forever remember this. Mother is like a rock. We all have to pass by her. So the next part is, so we'll keep it here and then we will play a quick video. Hi, hello everyone. This is Leticia Tennis Sword, and
The house.
You're muted. Can't hear the video.
told us that actually earlier when I talked with you that that's where this whole environmental storyline came into his mind about Earth Day in 1970s and the passing of Nixon laws. Can you kind of say that, like, how did he get into this kind of environmentalism work?
Yeah, I think he always had a connection to the earth, and he and my mom, we always had a vegetable garden. We grew a lot of what we ate. But when the first Earth Day came about in the 70s, and this was a whole campus thing, so the students on campus came up with this parade and kind of ended up being an annual sort of thing. But a lot of the students were wearing gas masks and things like that because they just really felt like the planet was going in the wrong direction, and probably it wouldn't be livable like soon, right? And so, but with President Nixon, who is of course, remembered for Watergate, but the other things that he did was to create the Environmental Protection Agency and pass the Clean Air and Water bills and those kinds of things that really helped us understand we were doing a lot of harm to the planet and we needed to try to fix it, if we could, and do better. And so I think with those kinds of things, he really started paying deep attention and becoming interested in what can an individual do and what can a group of people do. And so supporting the Sierra Club and supporting the Nature Conservancy of Portland and those kinds of organizations in his later life. I think those early times really kind of helped solidify those sorts of ideas.
So now about his life of art, because he was an artist, of course. So we know that sometime around the 60s maybe, or in 70s, he kind of took up a position like beyond McMinnville. He kind of started doing a lot of work at the Portland Art Museum, and he had a lot of like sculpture works. I know of one called The Family, which is at Oregon State University, and things like that. So, like, was that some big transition for you guys that he started living in Portland, and I think you were in McMinnville?
Yeah, we were in McMinnville. So my parents had separated at that point. And he actually started doing commission work in the, I think, 68, 69, when we were still probably right after we had moved to McMinnville. And he did just really a lot. His work was just varied. Like, he never pushed himself into a little niche, and this is the kind of art that I'm going to do. Like, he'd see something or learn something. Like, he was greatly influenced by Alexander Calder and his giant mobiles and things. And so these earrings that I'm wearing were sort of from that. So this earring collection that he designed were like little mini mobiles, right? Did these huge room installations. He did one, I think it was in Eugene, it was called Tension. And there's these huge steel cables that were attached to the ceiling and at the floor. And when you walked into it, you felt tense. I mean, it was really a statement about war and the state of the world and conflicts, that were all over. So there was a lot of, political statements and things intentionally. He did a lot of work with sound and light and movement. He did a lot of collaborations with dancers, and so that the dancers would dance in his piece. He did a lot with got really interested in electric sounds. So I remember that he purchased an electric organ, took it apart, turned it into a synthesizer, and then started, playing with sound. He's a drummer, right? I mean, he's got He's just so multifaceted. Like I don't think there's a word that could describe his art. There were a couple of pieces that I helped him install. There was one in Spokane that was actually a mobile that he put into a high school.
Okay.
That was, if I remember correctly, I think it had some solar powered components. So that was kind of an earlier, I was still in high school, so that was late 70s, very early, well, yeah, because I graduated in 81. So, and then there is another one in Salem, Oregon, it was called the Unemployment Building at the time. I'm not sure what they call it now, but it was stairwells, again with the steel cables, but it had these plexiglass discs. And as you walked up the stairwell, it spiraled.
Okay.
And I asked him about it, and he said, it's music.
Oh, nice.
Because music is mathematical, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, lots of really different, I have bronze sculptures that he did when he was still in San Jose. He did these kind of paper mache sort of things. He'd go over to the hospital across the way and get the oxygen tanks when they were spent and cut them in half.
Okay.
And, you know, so it's just...
It's very difficult to explain the breadth of it. Yeah,
It is, because there's just so much.
So shifting gears a little bit towards more of a spiritual life. So you told that something very interesting happened in 1970s in McMinnville that kind of strung a chord. Can you please talk about that?
Sure. Yeah, one of the other professors, and I think it was in the English department, invited a Swami to come speak, and I'm sorry that I cannot remember the name.
Yeah.
But he came and spoke, and was teaching transcendental meditation and just kind of a different pathway to spirituality. And my dad was very influenced by him. You know, my dad was raised Catholic, and even at the end of his life, you know, he still felt a connection to that Catholicism, and he even said that Vedanta, he felt a connection between Catholicism and Vedanta because of...
So what about his Jewish roots?
Well, his stepfather has Jewish roots.
Okay.
And I don't remember Freddie being a practicing Jew when I knew him. I'm sure he was in Czechoslovakia and probably when he first came to the United States. But that certainly influenced him because Freddie would have been influenced by the Judaism, and then, you know, and Freddie actually, and my grandma Lynn also, investigated more, you know, Eastern kinds of paths. So, you know, I think that had an influence on my dad as well.
So this story that happened, that you said that the Swami visited your home, and then I think that strung a chord, so he decided to move to Colorado, right? And then stayed somewhere in Arizona, and then I think it is 70s when he comes back to Oregon again.
Yes.
So do you actually know that at what time does he actually meet Swami Asheshananda, or like can come in close with him?
I don't have an exact date. I feel like it's somewhere in the mid 80s.
80s where he came to know and then got like super involved. So do you have any memories of you visiting with him in Scappoose and working in that forest?
Oh yes, yeah. He's very proud of that space, and he was proud of Vedanta for keeping it safe, and having it be not just a spiritual retreat, but also a place where others could come and just, you know, enjoy. I mean, he said, you know, there were some kind of big battles with, you know, big forestry, right? And trying to save that forest and not have it be logged or developed for, you know, homes or whatever. So yeah, I've gone several times, and we'd hike through all of the temples, and he talked to me about well, this one was falling down and, we had to take it all the way apart and I had to make new beams and we had to pour some footings and, fix the leaks or, the design was not quite right. So I redesigned it or, but I think the piece that he really loved was there was representation of more than just Vedanta's point of view, right?
Yes.
Representation of lots of other folks and how they look at the world.
Thank you. I get your point. So thank you for participating in this interview with us, and thank you for talking.
So thanks to Leticia for agreeing to give this interview. Nancy, next.
Is it working? Nope. I don't know. Can you hear me?
Can you start that one? That one we stopped it.
Want me to sing? You don't want that. You don't want that. Okay, okay. All right. So a friend said to me, make it short and funny. So I'm good with the short part. I don't know. So Peter was the love of my life. I loved his enthusiasm, his energy, his eloquence. There was never at a loss for words. I had to promise him that I would also he had a strong moral code. And so I had to promise him not to use our handicap parking myself. But I have to confess, I did use it once, but I got tired of limping through Fred Meyer's. I just wanted to say, I love that Mary Oliver poem. That I have to read it. That's an everything die at last and too soon. Tell me what you wanted to do with your wild and precious life. And he knew what to do. He lived his life to the most. And he said he lived to work and to make me laugh.
Terence. Here. Careful.
Thank you, Cheyenne. Thank you, Swami. Thank you for all coming here and sharing your memories and your thoughts and your impressions of our friend Peter. Peter describes himself as a karma yogi and a guru bhai. Those 4 words depict what I had as a relationship with him for 25 years or more. He came to Vedanta in 1984, 1985, and we immediately bonded with each other with our history being very Catholic, very mystical in its origins. And we all loved Master Eckhart, thought of unknowing, all kinds of mystics, St. Teresa of Avila, we would go off for weeks and weeks and weeks and talk about everything we could read about those mystics. But yet he still came back to Mother, and he came back to the Holy Mother as his ultimate guru. So that's what I meant when I said he's a karma yogi and a guru bhai. Guru bhai means we shared Mother's love, we shared Mother's graciousness, and we shared so much together. It's a tribute to him. The retreat is standing as an emblem of his hard work and dedication to Mother, because that's what he was. He was a karma yogi. He matured when he worked, and he loved when he worked, and he worked when he loved. So that's my greatest joy to be with him down at the retreat, and also painting this house. If you look at this house, you walk around it, I want you to know that every board on this house has had Peter Teno's impression. Either hammers or fiberglass tape. That's how he fixed the pillars in the back. He did a miracle. Everyone said, all the carpenters we consulted said, those pillars are gone. They're going to have to buy new ones. They're going to cost thousands of dollars. And he said, no, I know how to fix them. And wrapped fiberglass tape around them, five to 6 layers of fiberglass tape. And those pillars 27 years later are still standing. So I don't ever want you to walk past those shrines without thinking of Peter. Because he's the pillar of our community in karma yoga. He's a pillar of our life and our shrines this day. So I do want to say I had great joy working with him, great joy praying with him, great joy meditating with him, great joy hiking with him. And this is all part of our relationship as far as the guru by brother and the guru. I do want to share one thing that we did have in common that I didn't know about until his last month alive. That is that we shared the common bond of a mother that abandoned us. He had a mother that was very, very difficult to work with, and she was not able to take care of him. And when his father died, he was put into a facility. It was a Catholic facility in the Bronx. Cheyenne mentioned that in his presentation. And what happened is that he had an immediate bonding with the Virgin Mary. He said, this Christ is not going to be my support, but Mother Mary will be my support. And as I was brought up Catholic, I had the same experience with my mother abandoning me, putting me in a facility, and I bonded with my mother. And that was very much what brought me to Swami Seshananda, to reintroduce the dynamic spiritual mother to me that I had lost in the transition of a biological loss. So we both shared the same background, both thrown into orphanages, both thrown into places where we didn't have any support. We depended on the mother for all of our help, all of our support, all of our love that came strong through that bond. Of course, when he met Swami Seshananda, who was the last living disciple of Holy Mother in the world, he felt like he had come home. When I felt like I'd come home and he came home, our two kids coming home together to their mom. That's how it felt. So Peter was an inspiration to me. He was a karma yogi. He taught me how to do things. He taught me how to make things, taught me how to fix things. I thought everything I could learn from him was a gift. So I do want to pass that on. He was more than just a doer, he was a teacher for me and for everyone that worked with him. So thank you for that. I want to move into Bert Cornick. Bert Cornick is another karma yogi, Guru Bhai. He was a brother of mine for all these years, from the 1980s also. Bert and I worked together diligently on this house and on the retreat, fixing things, repairing things, building things. He was always asking for help for some things, and I would always try to be there with him. So one day Swami Seshananda was upstairs, and Bert was trying to recruit me for coming into the working outside. And Swami came down and he said, "Now I want you to know," in a loud voice, he said, "I want you to know that no way are you going to work around here without an attitude of focusing on the mother." He said, "You must present everything to the mother when you do it. You have to talk to her when you're making it. You have to present it to her when it's offered, and that will be your prayer to her." So Swami taught me through Bert Cornick, who understood these things better than I did, that your work is an offering. That's a special gift. And excuse me for my voice. I told Swami my voice might not last, My heart does, and it does go out to Bert, does go out to Peter. I'm just a richer person because of their love for me and their love for mother that came off in our relationship. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. This is the reason to do everything and putting it on YouTube. It will stay there for a long time. Thank you. Okay, so quick overview of Bert's life. Um, he was a larger than life person. So it is practically impossible to talk about him in 5 minutes, but I will try my best with a lot of Google Maps. So he was born in Portola, California in August 28, 1934. And then when he was 10 years, he moved to Chico, California. That's where he graduated from. And in his high school, he learned Morse code. Becomes a very interesting part of his life later. He graduated high school and then shows up in Hollywood because he wants to do, I don't know what exactly, but maybe party. So he starts living on the top of the Chinese theater, which is the very special place in Hollywood. So he starts living there, and evenings he went to Santa Monica Pier to party. Now, this is 1953. And he also starts going to the Don Martin School of Broadcasting. Okay, so this kind of adds up in his life later on. Next slide. So after this, he actually goes in Oroville, back to where he came from, Northern California, and he starts his life as a DJ. But being a DJ, he figures out he cannot stand with his machines for the entire day and play music in those Oroville parties. So he decided that doesn't work well with him. He enlists in the US Army and goes to Korea. Wants to go to Korea. He was sent in training to Arkansas in Fort Chaffee, and there he does a radio course. Since he already knew Morse code, it was easier for him to get into the course and start teaching. Instead of being shipped to Korea, the US Army decided to ship him to Hawaii. He spent the next 3-4 years of his life hopping from island to island, being a radio operator for the US Army and US Navy. He was a lifelong fan of radio. Even after he left Army, he remained a ham radio operator for all his life. His operator number was K6BWF. Good. When he came back, he joined college. After the army, he joined college. He earned his bachelor's, but then he moved. He was in Chico area, and he starts his real estate business. He actually joins a real estate person and takes apprenticeship and starts working hard. And then within a few years, he had his own business with like 12 agents and stuff like that. From there, he moves to Sacramento because it's a bigger market. And there in Sacramento, he starts his work of real estate. But then this is the place I think in 68, he moves to Sacramento. In 74, he decides to come to Medford, Oregon. So he moves there. And this is the time in 74, he meets his second wife, Elaine. With Elaine, he again moves in 78 to Eugene. Now, Elaine was a mental health worker, and she worked for the county, and that is how Elaine met Steve Schenk, and Bert met Steve Schenk through Elaine. So with Steve, he learned about Swami Asheshananda from Steve. When he moved to Oregon, his mind has already started moving towards Eastern philosophies, and he started reading books on his own. When he met Steve, he heard about Swami Asheshananda, and then came here, met Swami. Susie will talk about it. Then after that, from that time, he got initiated in 1983. From 84 till maybe till the end of Swami Asheshananda's life, given that he was a contractor and had his own business, he could move his schedule in such a way that he could come to the temple 4 to 5 times a week. He was practically here every day. He would do some work and then would take prasad from Swami Asheshananda after the puja, and then Swami would bless him with the mother picture he always carried, and then he would go. That would be his schedule. And he served with Swami Asheshananda. There are many interesting stories. He actually mended Mr. Bush's suitcase because that was in such a dilapidated state that it could only remain closed if it was tied with a giant rope. And Swami Asheshananda loved that thing and he carried it everywhere. So he was carrying a suitcase that was tied with a rope to various places like Boston, Calgary, God knows where not. And he felt it was very odd, but he knew if he goes and buys one, that would be a very difficult activity because the Swami would scold him from his hair to his toenails. So he decided ways to somehow approach this incident. And then one day Swami gave a talk. And there he talked about Sri Ramakrishna's story, where Sri Ramakrishna mends the feet of Haladhar, the Krishna deity in Dakshineshwar. So he says to him that I want to mend that thing like that so that you can reuse it. So Swami agrees by that argument and he takes that to mend it. So he actually served his guru from the time he met him till his guru left this mortal plane. In the last 8 months, he actually took turns with many other devotees to actually serve him. He was our treasurer from 1983 till 2001. For 18 years, he was the treasurer of the society. So we thank him for his long service for the society, his fingerprints all over this building, and his fingerprints at probably every other activity that we do here. So thank you. Yeah, he was such a handyman person that in 2011, before Lime bikes came out, he actually built his own e-bike. Fun fact. Thank you. So Steve, please. Your turn.
A couple little stories. Bert had just come up as, I didn't know him very well because I went down as a evaluation specialist for the mental health division for Elaine's programs. So, you need to change something? Closer. Ah, okay. All right, I want to make sure everybody can hear. Okay, so I was teaching people to evaluate their programs, which really is an impossible task because their programs don't work. And when they evaluate them, they find out they don't work. And so they stop evaluating themselves. So, but in any case, I did meet them. And they came up and met Swami Asheshananda. And I didn't know Bert very well, but I think on the second time that they came up from Eugene, they stopped by my house after visiting Swami Asheshananda after the Sunday lecture. Apparently, I was already back. And while they're sitting, I'm sure I said, well, have some tea or coffee and we can talk. And they probably wanted to talk about Asheshananda. I don't know how many of you have heard his lectures. But if you can imagine somebody who'd been to see 1 or 2 of his lectures and had studied a little bit, maybe read a little bit of the Course in Miracles or something, they would be completely out of their depths and have all sorts of questions. So, but 2 or 3 minutes after they got there, the phone rings and it's Swami Asheshananda. And I go, well, hi, Swami. And he goes, I want to talk to Bert. So I give him Bert the phone, and we were having a discussion for the board at the time about how to repaint the house color. I don't know, what color is this house? Green. Okay, so that was the color that it was before, and some people on the board wanted to change the color. Let's make it a little brighter. Let's do something different. And so Swami says, well, you're a contractor, right? So what should we do? Some people want to change the color. Some people don't. What do you think? And Bert says, well, I think, how long has it been green? And Swami tells him since, I guess, 67. And he says, well, it might be nice to have a change.
So Swami goes into a complete tirade, screaming at him, yelling at him, up and down, one end to the other. Okay, with a complete and total scolding. And you worthless Americans. That was one of his favorite. Okay, people are laughing. The worthless Americans was a favorite one. Get out. That was another favorite one. Anyway, so he must have done all of that, and then hangs up on Bert. And Bert hangs up the phone and looks at me and he says, "I think the Swami just tested me and I flunked." But it never occurred to Bert, not even to cross his mind. He knew he was doing what he could at that moment. And it never occurred to him that this was anything other than a test and an evaluation and Swami getting to know him. Well, he couldn't come the next week, but he did come to the society the Sunday after that. And Swami Asheshananda says to him, "I thought I'd run you off after scolding you like that." And Bert says, "It's going to take a lot more than a little hollering to get rid of me." He was at the library. He'd come over and also have tea and coffee with, what was Harold's Swami name? Thank you. Okay, him and Harananda, they would sit in the library and they'd have some tea, and Swami Asheshananda came down and looked at them. Oh, this was another one of his friends. "This is not a social club." Okay, so he would do "This is not a social club. You're just worthless Americans. Get out." Okay, to Bert. And, Bert had been doing this for years. And Bert just says, "Yes, Swami," and gets up to leave, and gets to the door. And Swami Asheshananda says, "Come back here. Get Bert, Cornick, Mr. Cornick, come back here." And Mr. Cornick comes back and he says, "You see this to Swami who?" Well, anyway, Harold and Marvin. Okay. So, because I don't think they were even brahmacharis at that time. Okay. So anyway, he says to them, you see his mind? You see what he's doing? Absolutely even. This is the way you should react. This is the way you should think. You should understand from Mr. Cornick." And then he had Mr. "Go ahead and finish your stuff." And he goes and is done. And Bert he always thought that whenever these scoldings happened, it was one, of course, a blessing that he was scolded. And he thought that this was a trick or a teaching technique of Swami Asheshananda to see if he could bring up the ego, and if the student could deal with the ego coming up and the ego saying, "Oh, you shouldn't be scolded like that," or "You didn't do anything wrong," or whatever else yappity yap the ego might be going on about. And Bert just considered it a way to get high, to just rise up above the ego, to see the ego there, to rise up above it, and to enjoy life. And the last thing I guess I should say about him and Swami was that he also was very free with Swami. So at one point he was teasing Swami about him not being a very powerful teacher, because the one in Antelope had over 10 Rolls Royces. And Swami Asheshananda didn't even have a car. And Swami Asheshananda goes, "Well, maybe you should go to Antelope then." And Bert says, "Oh no, Swami, no, I know the rules here. I know what to do here. And I know how to get illumination here." And Swami says, "Well, how's that?" And Bert says, "I grab onto your feet and I never let go." So let's hope he grabbed onto Ramakrishna's feet and didn't let go.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to share with you a story, and this is actually a written submission by Bert. So these are Bert's own words. And I'm just going to read a small excerpt from this book of reminiscences. And this section is about his relationship with Swami Seshananda. We lived in Eugene until 1980 and would try to drive up every weekend for the Saturday retreat or the Sunday lecture. Shortly after I met the Swami, I asked for a private meeting to find out more about how to meditate. He gave me some instruction, said to work on it, and come back again after I had practiced. I may have mentioned something about getting initiated to him at that time, but he said that would have to wait. So this went on for 5 years. Every year I would make an appointment for a private conference, and every year he would ask me how the meditations were going. He would then give me more instruction and tell me to come back next year. It became a game between us to see who could hold out the longest. Then one day during a lecture, he used the metaphor of a man who had fallen behind a tall wall, needing the help of another man to get out. The first man dropped a rope down to the second man and helped pull him out. I then decided this was the time to act. So I made an appointment to see Swami, and during our conversation, I asked him to give me initiation. He came back with his usual response, "We'll have to think on it." I retorted, "No, you have to give me the rope now and help me climb over the wall." His response was, "Well, okay, but we'll have to pick an auspicious date." He did that, and I was finally initiated after 5 years. What I found the most interesting about Swami Seshananda was his ability to read people like an open book. Each person who came into contact with him was treated according to their disposition and received yoga instruction appropriate to their nature. For example, if you were a karma yogi like me, you got plenty of work to keep you busy. If you were a bhakti yogi, you had plenty of worship and time in the shrine. If you were a jnana yogi like my friend Steve, you received a different teaching. Some people would come for a few weeks, and Swami would ask them to be initiated, while others had to wait years to be initiated. If you came with an open mind and an open heart, Swami would always give you something, and many times it was a good scolding to lessen the grip of the ego. Thank you.
So now actually I would say acknowledgements. I will give it over to Chris to speak and then finally do his music with Peter. So the thing is that first I would like to thank Nancy for sharing with us stories, pictures, and the write-ups. Judith Gale for email correspondences between us, Peter's first wife, Leticia for many phone calls and the interview, Helen for sharing the documents for Bert, Esther for our email correspondences. Chris will share the story. He actually shared a story and it struck me. Steve for earlier interviews that I've had of you, your emails and your detailed records of board meetings where we find many mentions of Bert's work. Corvallis Gazette, Portland Art Museum, correspondence with Smithsonian and Encyclopedia Britannica for pictures. Chris.
Well, I actually asked to be taken off because this is going to be very short. I only met Bert once, and I think it was after Swami Seshananda passed away. We were standing online waiting for food. Now, just to back up a little bit, I got here in about 82, 83, and I had one very short interview with Swami Seshananda. I had been to India at age 19 and had met a teacher who changed my life, spent 5 days with that teacher. Evidently, Swami Seshananda knew about this teacher. I mentioned the teacher's name and he just went, "Oh, we don't do any of that vibhuti around here." Okay, thanks. bye, you know. And that was that. And I came pretty regularly because I took my son to Sunday school here. And so that was kind of my main reason for coming. Although I was a big fan of Vedanta, I read the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. But from then on, I tended to, at least during this period in the 80s, I tended to regard Swami Sheshananda as kind of a cranky old monk. You know, just like, okay, he would start speaking and I would just tune right out. So actually, I don't think it was before Swami Sheshananda died, because I think I started paying closer attention after this conversation that I had with Bert. I didn't recall ever having seen him, and we're standing next to each other online. And I said, "Hi, what's your name?" I introduced myself, and he said, "Bert." And I said, "Well, have you been coming here for a while?" "Oh, yeah. Swami Sheshananda is my guru." I said, "He's your guru?" Yeah, I'm thinking this cranky old monk is somebody's guru, you know? And he said, "Yeah." And he proceeded to tell me about a dream that he had recently had where Swami Sheshananda appeared to him in a dream. And I had some experience with this phenomenon. And it was a very vivid dream. And I don't remember it exactly, but it was fairly long. And Swami Sheshananda took him into different rooms and was teaching him things. And Bert was looking right into my eyes the whole time he was telling me this. And it totally shifted my whole idea and attitude about Swami Sheshananda. And then later, after well, close to the time he passed, I had a very deep experience with Swami Sheshananda. So, but Bert was the first one to sort of wake me up as to who Swami Sheshananda was. Yeah, thank you.
All right. So at the end, closing song, Hallelujah by Leonard Cohen, with lot of additions by Toby Pollock. So Chris, Toby, and Miriam.
Let's figure out the sound there.
Yeah, I've taken a lot of it.
If we get any weird echoes or something, let us know. All right. Okay. This is what happens in live performance.
This is huge. I think it's on 5. Okay. Yeah, seems okay.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, we got it. So I've done a little bit of poetic license on Leonard Cohen's song,
Actually, quite a bit.
quite a bit. Not really. No, most of it is all. Most of it's all him.
I've heard there was the secret chord that David played and it pleased the Lord. But you don't really care for music, do you? It goes like this, the fourth and fifth, the minor fall, the major, the path of king, the chorus, hallelujah. 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 Your faith was strong, but you needed proof. You saw her praying on the roof. The beauty and the moonlight overthrew you. It went like this, the fourth, the fifth, the minor fall, the major, the baffled king composing. Hallelujah. 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 You say I took his name in vain, but I'm not sure I know which name. But if I did, well, really, what's it to you? There's a blaze of light in every word. It doesn't matter which word, the holy or the broken. Hallelujah. 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 I did my best. It wasn't much. I couldn't feel, so I tried to touch. I told the truth. I didn't come to fool you. And even though it all went wrong, I stand before the Lord of song with nothing on my tongue but hallelujah. 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 I know that I've been here before. I know this room. I've walked this floor. I used to live alone before I knew you. I've seen your flag on the marble arch. Love is not a victory march. It's a cold and it's a lonely hallelujah. 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 You know, there was a time you let me know what's really going on below. But now you never show it to me, do you? And remember when I flew to you, the holy dove was flying too, and every breath we drew was hallelujah. 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 Maybe there's a God above, but all I ever learned from love was how to shoot at someone who outdrew you. It's no complaint you hear tonight. It's not some pilgrim who's seen the light. It's a cold and it's a broken hallelujah. 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 Now I've heard there was this secret chord that David played and it pleased the Lord. I've told the truth. I didn't come to fool you. And even though it all went wrong, I stand before the Lord of song with nothing to proclaim but hallelujah. 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 Hallelujah.
Thank you all very much. We enjoyed a life. In a Bengali poem, it says, Pakhi gahe, the birds chirp, flower blooms, river flows by. Though these are temporary, but something tangible they leave behind. So on this note, thank you very much for coming and joining us today. And you are invited to have some prasad. It is arranged by Jane Mother and her associates. Thank you. Jai Sri Guru Maharaj Ji ki Jai. Jai Mahamai ki Jai. Jai Swami Ji Maharaj Ji ki Jai. Thank you.